Hello and welcome to this second episode of the NowFitness app. This time we're going to be looking at something really interesting. We're going to be connecting to Strava to have a look at what they've got available on their APIs. So we'll be veering a little bit away from the App Engine Studio, but let's get into it and see what updates we have for you. First of all, I want to show you that actually our instance, since we've done this last time, we've actually upgraded it to Vancouver. There may well be some functionality and features in Vancouver that's going to help us build our app, and hopefully we'll get to see those in the coming videos. What I do want to show you is something that I may have shown you before actually. Have you seen this website, Undraw? So one thing that we didn't have is a nice little logo for our NowFitness app. So Undraw is a fantastic website to go to look for these little kind of characters. You can use your kind of hex colors that you want to use against these as well, which is brilliant. I've actually downloaded a SVG file of this top left one for fitness stats. So just to show you, I've updated the logo in our app right there, which is cool. But App Engine Studio is not going to be our focus for this particular episode. We're going to be looking at something really, really interesting for those geeks out there in terms of APIs, tokens, authentication, the hard stuff. I've done all the hard graft this morning just to figure out how the heck these things work. I'm by no means an integration expert or anything like that. I've done a few integrations, of course, using web services and things like that, but each is different. So it's good to kind of read through the API documentation that Strava has to try and dissect what the hell you need to do. So let's come out of ServiceNow and let's have a look in terms of what are the steps we need to follow to be able to retrieve some data from Strava. Now, Strava, for those who are coming into this completely fresh, is a fantastic website for you to, look at your stats, and it gathers a lot of information. So if I show you a little bit about my profile, something that you may have seen from the first video, so you can see the different kind of activities that's going on in here. I should really just show my activities, shouldn't I, on these videos. But yeah, you can see all these kind of activities. I've done a load there, and what I'd like to do is pull all this data into ServiceNow and see what we can do with things like performance analytics and maybe AI and other things to kind of suggest to us how we can actually better train, or just to keep a nicer calendar of what's going on. So Strava does have an API, and I put together a few steps that we need to follow in order to set up that API connection. Now, I haven't decided how it will be used in our app or anything like that. I just needed to prove the point that we could actually connect to it and get some data back. So that's what this episode is all about. So let's have a look. So there is lots of documentation, as I mentioned previously, which I have, scrolled through to see. There's just loads there that we can get our hands on to try and get some data back. I think the hardest part of any kind of integration like this is the authentication. So there is a page just dedicated to authentication and how you do that kind of handshake, and you have to refresh tokens and access tokens, and then that'll work for what you're trying to retrieve. So there's lots of instructions in there, and not all of it kind of makes sense immediately. So it took a little bit of fiddling around to try and get this to work, and I'll show you the steps that I followed. Here's the kind of basic steps. And another plug as well, Notion. I've only just been introduced to Notion. It's absolutely brilliant for any kind of note-taking. I used to use OneNote quite a bit, but Notion is absolutely brilliant, and it has things like dictation as well, and also you can call AI from any kind of text that you have to ask AI anything, or summarize, or make longer, shorter. So again, Notion I also recommend. But let's have a look at this API. So the first thing you have to do for setting up an API, and obviously we only hope to do this once, we're not expecting all of the individual users to do this at all. But yes, we need to go to this website here. So strava.com/settings/API. And essentially where that brings you into, if I go to my settings in here, is this page here, my API application. Now, because I've already done this once, This is the kind of end page that you will see. When you go to that particular URL link, it will ask you for, okay, so what category do you want to put this underneath? I think I put it under like performance analytics. I didn't put any kind of club, and I didn't put any kind of I don't think I put too much else in there, to be honest with you, other than a logo as well, I think it asked for. So some random stuff. You have to obviously agree to the terms and conditions. So interestingly, this kind of like base kind of usage gives you 200 requests every 15 minutes, or 2,000 daily, which is obviously plenty for what we're doing, just as a proof of concept sort of thing, which is good. But it comes with a heap of stuff here, which is really important for us to start to note. So the things like client ID and client secret. So we'll come back to those. Those are the two main things that we'll be needing right now. Refresh token and access token are also extremely important. Refresh token is something that is going to be quite consistent in terms of a particular kind of code, as you can see it in there. Whereas the access token, as you can see, it does expire on a regular basis. So therefore, we almost need to keep calling this refresh token to get a new access token. So when we're thinking about this from our portal, or however we intend to use this, we will probably need to, trigger and getting that a fresh access token when we need it. So yeah, we'll be going through all those steps. But once you've gone through that first step, which is you're creating this API application, our next step really is the kind of authentication. So you need to be able to authenticate for this my particular profile for the app here to be able to have access to it. If that makes sense. And I think this will be the first step that we'll need in our app anyway. So if someone on their profile, maybe on the portal or something, they say click a button that says connect to Strava, they'll click it, and then what will come up is this all kind of authentication sort of screen. And that's what we're going to go to first. So to do that, we need to be able to go to this particular link here. It is after a couple of things. So it is after a client ID. Now we've seen that in that previous screen. We'll populate that in a second. There's also a redirect URI. So it may well be that we put in the portal URL within that link here. And then we can probably retrieve the results from the URL after that. We'll come back to that bit. That sounds very nerdy. But let's get this step first in place. Let's update this client ID based on that we want the one that we have here. What we will be doing, by the way, is just kind of proving this in Postman rather than in ServiceNow for now. I've always used Postman just for kind of testing APIs, make sure it's working as intended. So we don't need to put this into Postman. This is just a web thing. So again, this is for the essentially the user to authenticate, to say, yes, I want to use your profile, or give you permission. So I'm going to just paste that in there. And then what will happen is it will come up with this. So authorize James Test. So that was the name of my app, by the way. I just called it James Test to connect to Strava. And I don't know if this was like a redirect URL or something like that I put in there. But yeah, I put the name of my PDI within that section. So yeah, so it says what James Test will have access to, the public data and private activities. I'm pretty sure you can apply, you can see right at the top in the URL, or can you see in the URL? You can't see in the URL, but if I go back to here, you can see the URL. It says here what activities, so this is the kind of level of access that you are almost kind of requesting in here, so read all. I'm pretty sure there will be some other types of activities like being able to post new activities in Strava and that sort of thing. I don't think we're going to go to that kind of lengths in this particular app. We're almost kind of like, it's more like data retrieval we're doing rather than posting back. But it's an interesting concept and interesting thing that we can do. Should we get interested in trying that out? But I think read access is absolutely fine. So I'm going to click on authorize, and we'll see that it will kind of go nowhere because we said it's going to go back to localhost. So it won't go to any kind of page. But what it's come up with, and I'll paste it into the chat here, or into here. I'll just come down here. Nope. That's not what I wanted. Let me copy. There we go. paste. Why are you going to localhost? Oh, that's because you're doing the whole blooming thing. Okay. Anyway, this is what it's come up with, right? So it came up with this in the URL, and there's obviously something that we need to parse when this comes back on our kind of portal. But interestingly, it's come back with this code here. Now, this code is our authorization code. And we'll need that, first of all, to be able to retrieve the likes of a refresh token. So if we look down into here, into this refresh token URL, which will be our first Postman call, we need to enter this code. So I'm going to enter that code in here. If I just skimmy over and update this little section. So there is our code. So another thing that you've seen that I've put in automatically in here as well is we've got the client ID, which is again something we need. We've got the client secret. So remember, we also got that from here. So here's a client secret. And what else is in this particular API? So we've got, these are all the old parameters, of course. So client ID, client secret. We've got the authorization code, which we received back. Which will do that kind of tying in with that particular user, which is good. And what we'll get back from this is a refresh token. We'll actually get a refresh token as well as an access token. But what we will see with that is if I copy that and go into Postman. So those who haven't used Postman before, as I said, it's really useful. There's obviously a free version that you can just run these APIs and test them out, sort of thing. So I am going to create a new request in here. So this will be a post request, and what this will be doing is get refresh token, and if we paste that URL in here, I can see our parameters. So we've got the client ID, the client secret, all from that API page. We've got the authorization code in there. Fantastic. And then if we send that, what we'll see is we will get a couple of things back, which is the main things. So here we got a refresh token, and we've also got a access token. So another thing which you can see in here as well is it's got that kind of confirmation of that athlete that we've been able to pull back. So again, this is really useful information because it may well be that we can tie in some of this information back to our competitor table. I mean, there is a separate API call to retrieve more data about that particular person, which is good. But yeah, the things that we're interested in is both the refresh token and the access token in here. So that is essentially our next step. So access token. So this is the access token that will give us access to the individual's obviously account, or the things that we need, like the activity lists, rather than the refresh token. Now, the important things around that is, like I said before, this access token is going to expire every X period, so it may well be that we need to keep calling these to be able to get the latest access token. So in the access token one, what do we need? So we've got the client ID, the client secret. We've also got refresh token. So because we've got our refresh token now, if I just tell you what I'll do, I will copy and paste that into Postman and add request. So then we'll say get access token this time. This is also a post. And paste. Then we just need to replace this refresh token with what we received previously. So we'll copy and paste that in to there. Get rid of these. We'll just save these two. And I appreciate it said get there, but we have post, which is correct. So this will now, if we send that on its way, give us back exactly what we need. So it'll tell you when it expires. It's given us obviously back that refresh token, but it's also given us back that access token. Now we may have already known this information from the initial get refresh token, but this is the one that we can keep calling, because once we have that refresh token, it's not going to change. So we can keep calling this particular API to getting the latest access token, which is really useful. So essentially, once we have our access token, we have everything we need now to be able to make an API call to getting the activities or anything else that we need. So let's go back to the API instructions to having a look to see what kinds of things we can pull back using that level of access that we have of read all. So if we look down the left-hand side here, we've got an example kind of list of stuff that we can go and get, and there's a lot. So it's kind of grouped by certain kind of sections here. So we've got activities. So this is pretty good. So we can obviously post activities if we had that access. So have a look. Activity write. We didn't obviously request write, so we will not have access to go and do that. Get activity. I think that will be really useful. I think if we're able to almost kind of like list the activities in some kind of list, and maybe we can kind of retrieve them one by one if we need to do that. It may well be that it's a better idea to just retrieve them all on a semi-regular basis or something like that. We'll have to think about that, but it's good to know that we can pull back the activities. And obviously this will be just for that authenticated user as well. So obviously that one that we've authorized for this particular access token, it'll be for that particular individual. So what else can we get? We can get comments. We can get the people who gives us kudos, laps. I think this documentation is pretty good. It gives you the kind of like sample responses, exactly what to put in the URLs and how it's expecting it. It's looking good. It's looking good. We've also got listing of activities. That's cool. So I think that's probably what we want to do now, is we want to kind of retrieve back the activity list for this individual, and we should be able to get back, as we can see, what was my latest one again? Should we go back to see it? My latest one was something about, was it evening run? Yeah, so it's an evening run, which is 4.44 kilometers. I'm pretty sure there were settings about retrieving in a certain time period sort of thing, so you can specify that as well. So that looks good. So let's use this get method then. So we'll just copy that bit first, and let's do a new request. So get activities, get, boom. Right, so we got get activities, and what we should be able to do here is, because obviously we've got this access token now, so I'm going to specify as a parameter for access token for the one that we had retrieved. So I'll paste that in there. So then that should be enough, I believe, to retrieve the activities for myself. But let's find out. Hey, there you go. Look. There we are. We've got a lovely JSON output to show us that we have for this particular athlete, which is obviously the one that we've got access to. This is the distance in meters, which would be an interesting thing. So we might have to do a little bit of playing around with the fields where we're storing this information. The elevation, the type of activity, the start time, probably end time somewhere. Map information. See, that could be really cool to bring that in. If we can bring in the maps as well, that would look really cool, wouldn't it? Lots of stuff. All the stuff that we'd certainly need, like the heart rate information and speed and blah, 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 blah. That'd be really cool to kind of plug into ServiceNow and see what we can do with it. And then here comes more evening jog. I don't know how far this is going to go back. Let's see there's an evening run there back on the 17th of June. So yeah, obviously we can depict in here a list of, if we go back into the API documentation. We've got before, after, it defaults to 1 page, so that's why we're only getting up to a certain amount. So it's only 30 per page. So it'll be my last 30 activities in my particular profile. So that's been really good. So we've been able to do quite a bit there, is being able to look at authentication. We've been able to pull back some activities from the authenticated account. What we need to do is see what that means from a ServiceNow perspective. Maybe what we need to look at next is that kind of portal where it allows the individual user to be able to connect to Strava to pull their activities in. So maybe that's what we look at next, is in creating this kind of portal experience. And how do we kind of configure, maybe in Flow or something like that, this integration with Strava, where we can use these endpoints that we've already seen here to pulling back these activities and storing them within our activities table. So if you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. Please do share the video. Please do, leave your comments down below. Anything I've got wrong or messed up or anything like that. If it's been really useful, please let me know. We're going to keep this series going. Let's see where we get to with it. Let's see the power of the ServiceNow platform in being able to, really read this data and come up with really cool suggestions off the back of it, maybe using AI. That sounds good to me. Hopefully it does to you. I will see you in the next episode.